Darren Peters, founder and managing partner with the Peter Damon Group. And I'm joined here by my colleagues, co-host and executive producer Sericia Nelson, and Vice President of Policy here at the Peter Damon Group, Camille Moore. We have a very exciting show today with our guest and my friend, Elroy Sailor. Elroy, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to turn things over to Camille and Sericia to kick things off and introduce our guests, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So thanks again, Elroy.
Thank you so much, Darren. As you've mentioned, we're so excited today to have with us another guest. I know I say that every episode, but seriously, all of our guests are top tier. They're amazing people, and we're so happy to be able to bring them to you all on our platform, the PowerPlay Series. So, Mr. Sailor, just tell us about and tell us what you want us to call you.
You know, my mother calls me boy, so I don't want you to go that low. And my father, bless his heart, who passed away, he used to call me Mr. Sailor, believe it or not. But you can just call me, my friends just call me Elroy.
Okay. Well, we're your friends. So It's all Elroy
right
here. All Elroy. Elroy, welcome to the PowerPlay Series.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And I love that. I love the title, PowerPlay Series. Who came up with that? It's very creative.
Well, I think that is a Darren Peters invention. Of course.
Darren has got a lot of wit, and he knows how to go from concept to thought. So I love that. I love that title.
He absolutely does, and we won't talk about him too badly in his absence, or too great, because But anyway, PowerPlay is such a wonderful platform that Darren really was his brainchild about 20 years ago now, more than 20 years ago, but came into fruition 20 years ago. And now we're in this space. And again, we're thrilled to have you. We want to tell the world about who you are. You've done some magnificent things throughout your career. So could you take, just a minute to tell folks, who is Elroy?
Well, Sericia, thank you for hosting this. And I appreciate Darren. Darren and I have been in the saddle. Well, I'm gonna date myself, but Darren and I, we go back a couple of decades. So it's an honor to see Darren, doing this PowerPlay series. It's an honor to have watched Darren and have been a road dog with him over the last 2 decades, working on various projects together and just being a part of some magical things that happen in our country. In spite of all of our faults and failures, this still is a country where you can achieve some amazing dreams, and we can do some great things as people of color. My story is pretty simple. I'm born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I'm the eldest of 3 children. My mother was a social worker. My father was a millwright with a couple of small businesses. Spent a lot of time with my grandmother and grandfather, Jesse and Nancy Viola Sailor. They had 18 kids. We have about 82 grandchildren.
Wow.
And I'm somewhere in the 60 first cousins.
Wow.
So I come from a very, very big family in inner city Detroit.
Wow.
And learned my values from, my aunts and uncles and my grandfather, my grandmother, my mom and dad. I went to a small high school in Detroit, Cass Tech, and then St. Martin de Porres. I left Detroit at 16 years of age and started at Morehouse College. Graduated from Morehouse College at 20 years of age. Had some challenges coming out of school, so the Lord had to sit me down for a while, and that's a story for another time. I ended up working at Pizza Hut, actually as a waiter at night, because I wanted to keep my days free and I wanted to keep my days free, so I worked at night. And during the day, I volunteered on a governor named Governor John Engler, his campaign. Well, he won. Long story short, after being told no 2 times, I finally got a job opening up mail, licking stamps, doing those sort of things for Governor John Engler in Michigan. And over the course of 12 years, I went from opening up mail to being the youngest cabinet secretary in the state of where I actually ran the Office of Urban and Economic Development. Spent about 4 years on Capitol Hill on the Senate side, working for a senator named Senator Spencer Abraham, who went on to be Secretary of the Energy. And then right before I left government, I spent about 4 years with former Congressman J.C. Watts, when he ran the conference in Washington, D.C. And when J.C. Watts retired, he asked me to join him. He said he didn't want a partner. He didn't want a staffer anymore. He wanted a partner, put it that way. And so I went to my wife, who I actually met. So let me back up. I met my wife when I was 16.
Get this right now. This is important.
Yes. I said, let me back up because I was going to close with that, but it kind of messes up the story. So I met my wife when I was 16. I was at the house and she was at Spelman. She walked across the yard. First day, it was freshman week. And I told my partner, Dwight, I said, you see that shorty over there? I said, I'm going to marry her one day. Well, that was in 1986. Lord grew me up and allowed me to be a man worthy of to marrying her. We actually named our children our freshman week. I said, if we ever get married and if we ever have kids, our son is going to be named E. Claiborne Prescott Sailor. And he is now a freshman at West Point. They call him plebes. And then I said, if we have a girl, a daughter, we're going to name her Alamni DJ Sailor. And she is a senior at West Point. So we've got 2 kids at West Point. And my wife, we kind of worked in the same space. She spent some time working in the White House. She worked at the U.S. Department of Education as a deputy chief of staff, and she is now in the cabinet of Governor Youngkin out of Virginia. So first and foremost, I'm a father and I'm a husband. So that's my job full time. Now, how do I take care of and my husbandly duties is I'm now an entrepreneur. Like I said, about 16 years ago, former Congressman J.C. Watts and I started a company. And that's a funny story here. So I came home after JC announced this retirement, told my wife, she said, yeah, I saw the news. What are you going to do now? We don't have any money because you told me I could stay at home and take care of the babies. So she says, so how are we going to survive now that JC retired? I said, well, JC asked me to go start a business with him. She looked at me and she used the name that my mother uses. She says, okay, boy, what are you going to do? I knew I was in for it then. I'm going to start a business. She says, well, have you ever run a business? I said, yeah, my dad and I, we had the little pop machines and he had a little laundromat. She says, no, that doesn't count. Have you ever run and operated a real business? Not you and your dad having pop machines at the local barbershop and you guys having, a little convenience store. I said, no. She said, okay, well, do you have any money? I said, no. And I said, well, JC's got about $30,000. And she's like, oh, wow. Okay. So you're going to be like a high price lobbyist making like 30 grand a month. I said, no, that's all he has is $30,000 for the 2 of us to get this business started. So he's making an investment. And she says, boy, you know that job that Karl Rove offered you to work to be the president of the United States, his domestic policy advisor. She said, I think you ought to call Karl Rove back and tell the President George W. Bush at the time, that you will accept that position. I had been in government my whole life. I went straight from college to government to Capitol Hill, and I just wanted to get into the entrepreneurial space. So we prayed on it, talked to some of my advisors, and, Lord and behold, I was 16 years ago, and God has been good. We've been very, very blessed. I've had some great people in my life. I've had some great mentors, some great friends like Darren. I've picked up 2 John Deere dealerships along the way, JC and I. We now have three John Deere dealerships in Texas. We end up partnering with Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we launched Black News Channel February of last year. We're in 50 million homes as of today. We have our consulting shop in Washington, D.C., and we've represented foreign governments, Fortune 500 companies. And I've had the opportunity to serve on a couple of publicly traded boards and watch some companies go public and get sold for billions of dollars. So I've just been really, really blessed. I've been very fortunate, and I've just been grateful.
It's an amazing story, Elroy. That's a lot. It's a lot.
It is. And Sericia, if I may, Elroy, you have gone. It sounds like your entrepreneurial spirit has really been a steadfast part of your journey, because I'm hearing you talk about Pizza Hut in the mailroom, literally to the boardroom in billion-dollar companies, which is no small feat. So I think maybe the next question is, and we kind of had a question already, with your really impressive resume, you are no stranger to being a part of billion-dollar corporations as an advisor, a consultant, someone who is helping steer the ship. So our question for you is, of all of the amazing acquisition work you've done with Harvest Health and Recreation, along with creating a news network, all of these really amazing things, is there maybe a project that sticks out in your mind that maybe was one of your favorites, or when you learned an amazing lesson? In talking to our power players, it's always important for us to know a little bit more about that central state that keeps you grounded, or that keeps you focused on these many different projects you've been a part of.
Sure, Camille, thank you. That's a great question. All of the projects that I've worked on have been purposeful. My journey has been one that has continued to evolve. I started when I left Capitol Hill with more of a singular focus. My wife was 3 months pregnant when as I mentioned, my daughter was about 4 years old. I was living on a government salary, and my wife wasn't working. So I kind of had a singular purpose when we first started, and that really was to make money so that my family could have a decent quality of life, like my father and my mother provided for me. But as I evolved, I started getting a lot more purposeful in life. And then my purpose, and I don't want to sound churchy or religious, but my purpose started being more so, well, God, what do you want me to do? What is my mission for you, and how can I advance the kingdom? And I realized as I started focusing more on how can I advance the kingdom and praying and asking God for his leadership, he continued to bless me with more than I could ever imagine. Our John Deere dealerships, that was a blessing. I've got to give a shout out to Reverend Jackson and Reverend Al Sharpton. There was a brother at John Deere who, for a few years, he retired. He tried to, well, let me back up. So John Deere had never had a Black-owned dealership. There are about 3,200, give or take, dealerships in the country. Wow. And they had never had a Black-owned dealer in the history of John Deere corporate. And that company is very old. It's one of America's, oldest companies. I'm not sure where they rank, but they're very old. And so this brother, he was at John Deere corporate. He retired, and he applied to become a John Deere dealer. Well, for whatever reason, he did not receive authorization to become an authorized John Deere dealer. Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Jackson, they got involved, and they were doing some protesting. And JC and I were just out running our consulting business. We were starting some other businesses, and we get a call from Denny Hastert, who was the Speaker of the House at the time. And Denny Hastert, John Deere corporate is in Denny Hastert's district back in Illinois. And he says, well, hey, JC Elroy, we need you guys to help John Deere out. They have a socioeconomic, at that point, there was not a DE&I. So they said they have an issue. Maybe you all can help steer John Deere towards a resolution. And so I got on the phone with Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Jackson and talked about what were the challenges, and they explained, the challenges. And then I picked up the phone, and John Deere and JC and I flew out, and we met with the CEO of John Deere. He explained the challenges. We gave him what we thought could be some solutions. He agreed to the solutions. We got Reverend Jackson and Reverend Sharpton to create a kind of a cooling off period. So we then said, well, hey, goal number one is to get some Black folks into the dealership position. Goal number two is to meet with some banks and see if we can get viable financing and capital. Goal number three is to make sure that there's a supplier line, the folks that will actually acquire the equipment. So we set up some John Deere minority business development seminars around the country. We went to Detroit. We went to Atlanta. I think we were in one other city, maybe Philadelphia. We visited with the Department of Education, the Department of Agriculture, the Secretary of State, any federal agencies that acquire equipment. We visited with some mayors. And so we started structuring a viable pathway for people of color who look like the three of us to acquire a John Deere dealership. And we talked to a couple of banks to start looking at financing. Well, as I started going through it, my entrepreneurial cap went on, and I said, oh my God. I said, JC, do you see these margins? And do you see the economic downturns in the country over the last 50 to 75 years? John Deere's margins have stayed very steady. They've actually outpaced, S&P 500 and the Dow. Now the margins aren't as high as .com, I said, but they're very steady through zips. And so he looked at the margins, and I said, well, hey, JC, I'm thinking we ought to try to acquire this dealership. And he says, he called me Big E. I'm a $1.25 soaking wet. I don't know why he called me Big E.
Another great name.
But he says, hey, Big E. He says, Big E, if you could put the deal together, I'm all in. So I started, since we were already down the path, first he said, let's pray on it, because JC's a praying fellow as well.
He is.
We prayed on it. And then we felt that was the direction that God was driving us in. We prayed on it. All the spade work was done. Financing was being laid. The partnerships were being laid. The opportunities to have equipment sold to municipalities and other private sector entities was being laid. So we stepped up to the plate, applied, and won those 2 dealerships. Wow. So, but the point is, it was, we're in DC, so you're talking politics for a second. You're talking about a Republican Speaker of the House who had the foresight and the hindsight to say, hey, Elroy, you and JC have handled a lot of these issues for, the Republican Party. I think you all can help on this because you all have got great relationships with many of the civil rights leaders. John Deere, the corporate folks said, well, hey, you guys are in the private sector. You understand the nexus between public policy, go-to-market strategies, and business, and you clearly understand your community. And we had great relationships and credibility with Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Jackson that they gave us the latitude to say, we're going to trust you all to see if we can put a deal together. So it was a matter of trust, faith, hard work, credibility, and doing a lot of homework. So
collaboration.
Yeah. So that was a unique, it was fun. It was engaging. Of course, it was stressful at that time. I didn't know if I could raise the capital. Didn't know if we would get orders placed. Didn't know if we can put the team together. And here's another thing. Here's how God works again. So, I'm from Detroit. I can't tell you the difference between a tractor and a go-kart, right?
Okay.
So there was a white brother who was getting ready to retire from John Deere. He'd been there for a while, and Lord and behold, his granddaughter was being born, and he wanted to go back to Texas. So, and he was open to going back home, being the general manager to run our shop. So we got a John Deere insider who just happened to be retiring, who just happened to be living in Texas. And I don't believe in coincidence. That was providence. Because JC and I were praying, okay, we kind of got a hold of this bone. Now, what do we do with it? Now we got to figure out somebody to run it. And we prayed it up. Blessings went up and grace came down. And the fellow, our white brother from John Deere Corporate said, I want to go back home. Sign me up.
Right. Well, listen, I think you've got stories for days, and they're very inspirational. I think that they, even though this is back in your memory bank a little bit, these lessons are still relevant to today. And here's a true or false question. I already know the answer to this, but I want you to say it. True or false, Elroy? Can you be on the opposite sides of the aisle and still be political aisle and still be friends? Can you be friends with people across the political aisle?
Oh my goodness. In today's society, that is very, very tough. But I think it's tough for people who don't profess to be kingdom men and kingdom women. So I think if you don't profess to be a kingdom man and a kingdom,
it's hard, isn't it? It will be hard.
I think that's very hard to be friends. I think if you profess to be a kingdom man and a kingdom woman, I think it's still tough in this environment, but your faith then compels you. My faith doesn't say I have to like you, but my faith says I have to love you. Right? That's what my faith tells me. But being from Detroit, Michigan, and a city that was pretty much like 80% Black, going to Morehouse College, an all-Black male school, having a wife who went to Spelman, an all-Black female school, growing up in that environment, and then working my way through the Republican Party and achieving some milestones. I had street credibility before I joined the Republican Party, and I knew who I was before I joined the Republican Party. And I didn't join the Republican Party for what the Republican Party could do for me. I joined the Republican Party for what I thought I could do for the party.
Okay, preach, Elroy.
Two different things. And I think JC and I have been able to make some small steps, you know, working with the late John Lewis, the African American Museum. That's JC and John Lewis. We wouldn't have had that. Those two got together and they worked it out. They got through the nonsense in Washington, and they got $1 million out of the Appropriation Committee and got that signed into law and got it passed. The AGOA, that was J.C. Watts and Charlie Rango out of New York. You know, two giants. We would have never had a trade deal with Africa that impacted 13 countries and over $1 billion in trade. That was two brothers working together. Donna Christensen from the USVI and J.C. Watts, our minority health center that we have over at HHS now. There was not a focus on disparities that impact communities of color before Donna Christensen and J.C. Watts got together. And I happen to be fortunate to be at the center of all those discussions. And, you know, Michael Collins was my Morehouse brother when he was John Lewis's chief of staff. So we went way back. And I can just go down the list. So for me, it was never difficult because I had, you know, my Morehouse College relationships that spanned the country. I had my Detroit relationships. I carried that to DC, and I didn't come to DC to be a Republican. I came to DC to be a brother who was going to try to change the party.
Right.
And when we got here, I think we did make some changes. And so that was never a problem for JC or I. But in today's environment, it is tough. And what I have to do in today's environment is lean more on my faith, actually more than my credibility and my relationships, because what we're seeing today is something I've never seen in 30 years of politics. I've never seen an environment like this in my life.
Yeah. Well, you have definitely weathered, you know, the times, and I think that you are an awesome example for our public servants and our lawmakers in this day and age. And so if we could get more folks like Elroy Sailor and J.C. Watts, I think our country would definitely be trending in the right direction. We could get that kind of collaboration and understanding of purpose and mission. That would be awesome. Well, you know, they say you can tell a Morehouse man a lot, but you can't tell him much. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, but they don't usually say much. They say another four level word. But yeah, much is appropriate for this conversation. But yeah. Well, I have heard that more than once.
I have a great appreciation for Morehouse men, and it definitely, as you said, definitely the whole HBCU experience, if you're able to have that, it definitely helps you in life and creates great vision and perspective for any endeavor, any work that you do. So kudos to Morehouse and what they produce in and through you, for sure. And
I got beat up because I sent my son to West Point, and my wife, we sent our daughter to West Point. So we took a little bit of hit. So
that's all right. That's all right. Y'all got the next generation. It sounds like y'all have created some powerhouses like yourselves. So we'll watch out for that next generation.
Yeah, we figured we did it the HBCU way. We said, you guys go try the military academy way and see what you can plow the soil there.
Listen, the sailors can cover it all, the gamut.
Well, it's definitely enough of us.
Right. Well, as we come to the conclusion of our chat today, we always ask our guests a question. We ask them, what power play, if you could change an issue or any aspect of life to make our world a better place, what would be Elroy's, Big E's power play?
I think the power play would be from Ephesians, and that's, we were created to be amazing. And if we just wake up every day and look at what the good book told us, that's not arrogance, that's not overconfidence, that's not ego, that's faith, that's biblical. And I think if everybody woke up every morning and just says we were created to be amazing, I think the world would be a much more amazing place.
Amen. If we walk in that, that's definitely a power play, a divine power play, if there ever was one.
It's written 3,000 years ago. Camille, you and Sericia, you guys were created to be amazing.
All right. Indeed.
Sericia, I mean,
I'll take it.
Indeed.
I'll take it. Well, Mr. Sailor, we want to thank you so much for your time. I know that we probably have just got the tip of the iceberg in terms of the stories you have, just all of the journeys that you've been on. It's so great to talk to someone very purpose-driven because your reasons are very clear. I think in all of these instances, your reasons are very clear. Quite an impressive background and resume, and we know that you are working on and headed towards even more great things. So best wishes to you and your family, to your wife, to your team. We do want to let our viewers know where they can find you on the socials. If you're socially active, maybe where they can subscribe, become a part of Black News Channel. So if there's any leave behinds or if there's any information that you would want folks to subscribe to or follow for all things Mr. Elroy P. Sailor, now would be a great time to share that with our audience.
Oh, geez, you're getting way above I just got rid of my typewriter.
Wait a minute, you've launched a whole network here.
Yes. But it's BNC something ... Okay, but if you just Google Black News Channel BNC,
folks,
you can get that. I do have a Twitter handle, but I don't. It's Elroy at something Twitter. I'm sorry.
We got you. It's on the screen. Yeah, okay. We got you.
Make sure to include all of those tidbits.
But I'm always open. Folk, I picked up one last thing when I launched my business. I didn't know Vernon Jordan. I picked up the phone and called a brother. I said, "Hey, I'm about to start a business." He didn't know me from Adam. I didn't use JC Watts' name. I said, "I'd love to come and sit down and talk with you." Vernon Jordan gave me 30 minutes of his time and said, "If you want to start a business, this is how you got to do it."
Man.
And he talked to me man to man, brother to brother, faith brother to faith brother. And I remember those words today. And he said, "Promise me one thing." He said, "If any other young brother calls you, when you get to the seat that I'm sitting in, make sure you do the same thing I did for you." So if any brother or sister wants to call me, I am compelled and I'm obligated, because I gave Vernon Jordan my word almost 18 years ago that I would do for someone else what he did to me, and that sit down and just talk to me and give me some guidance and advice when I started my business, tried to start my business.
That's awesome. Paying it forward.
Yep.
Late great Vernon Jordan, amazing. And talk about amazing, walking in amazing.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Bless his heart.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the PowerPlay series. We're going to certainly be keeping up with you, Elroy, and all of your wonderful adventures. We know that you're not done yet. God is not done with you yet. So we'll be keeping up with you, and maybe we'll see you again around this way.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all so much and appreciate it. Y'all have a wonderful weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.